Since I will be using an engine kit from USCP, I will need to cut the hood open. Stock, this kit does not come with an engine, so the hood is of course molded shut. I cut out the panel lines with my panel line scriber and just kept on scribing until I scribed through the plastic and the hood eventually came loose. The edges were then cleaned up with some sanding sticks and also a knife to cut off some rougher parts of the edges, and I could then move on to cleaning up all of the mold lines on the body, marking them off with a permanent marker to show me where they are, and then start sanding those down as well. After finding all of the mold lines and marking them with a permanent marker to show me exactly where they are, and also the status in between the sanding stages, where once the black is gone, the mold line should be as well, so then you can stop sanding and move on to the next one. The mold lines are removed, so now it's time to refine some of the panel lines. They are pretty nice already, but they could use some more depth, so I just started scribing them out with the panel line scriber from Tamiya. Once happy with the way all the panel lines looked, I could move on to sanding the entire body down with some 600 grit sanding sponges to rough it up before I start priming it. Because the plastic of the body is red, I'm going very slow and applying thin layers of primer not to build it up too thick and have the solvents eat into the plastic and bring out the red color through the primer. That can happen with the red, so be careful in doing that. In my case, I'm just going slow, applying thin layers and waiting enough time in between for it to cure properly. The first coat is on, the red is still pretty much visible, so I could move on with 10 minutes in between of drying time, then applying a second coat. In this coat, the red is pretty much disappearing, and just to be sure, I'm letting it dry for another 10 minutes and applying a third coat. With the third coat on, the red is pretty much gone all the way and it's nicely covered in gray primer. I let it sit for about 30 minutes to cure and then started sanding it smooth with some 3000 grit sanding sponges. I decided to go with a nice dark green used on some of the 70s racing Nissans, of course starting on those hard to reach, easy to forget spots first, and then slowly building up on the rest of the body. The color is really thin and not really covering all that well, so I'm giving it enough time, about 10 minutes in between coats, and keeping the coats very light. I'm applying about 4 coats just to build up the coverage slowly and not to build it up too quickly and again have that red plastic seep through. After applying the 4th coat, the color is starting to become nice and dark, and I'm ready to move on to clear coat. Of course, I'm letting this 4th coat dry properly before mixing up the clear and applying a nice coat. With the clear mixed, the hard to reach, easy to forget spots now coated, I'm going on to the rest of the body. Of course, I'm just keeping it with 1 coat, then letting that dry for about 24 hours, sanding it smooth with some 3000 grit sanding sponges to keep it as smooth as I possibly can, applying some decals, and then moving on to the final coats of clear to have it as smooth as possible. So like I said, the first coat is on. I let that cure for about 24 hours, then took out some 3000 grit sanding sponges to remove a couple of dust spots on the roof and also to smoothen it out as best as I can in order for the decals to lay down nicely and of course the final layers of clear to smooth out even better. With the decals in place and dried properly, I mixed up another batch of clear and started applying the 3 final layers of clear. The first and second one are pretty heavy, and the third one is just to check on the entire body, adding some more clear on some orange peely spots and to smooth it out as best as I possibly could. Clear laid down super smooth. I'm really happy with the way that it came out. I now need to let it dry for a couple of days, and in between those days I'm of course moving on to the chassis and interior in the next videos.